Hookup culture is a scam. This is the idea that people can sleep around with random strangers and basically have a lot of non-committal fun and there will be no consequences to it. That you can basically have true freedom when it comes to what you do in the bedroom. But while that sounds like a great thought, it has a lot of consequences. And sure, a lot of those can be mitigated in that we know that unwanted pregnancies, we have a lot of ways of preventing that now, same with STDs, but there's this whole other aspect that people tend to kind of either glom over or they just straight up aren't aware of it, and that's the psychological and emotional aspect to sleeping around willy-nilly. You see, we are animals just like every other creature on this planet. We're not separate from that just because we happen to be the most intelligent out of all of them. Like, we are still animals. That means we still get messed up by emotions and our psychology. And yeah, so what happens here is there is an emotional and psychological aspect to intimate stuff in the bedroom. And people need to realize that before they decide to engage in hookup culture. For instance, one of the worst things that can happen, and if you ask me, this is incredibly important, but I get that a lot of people are trying to kind of, how do I even put it? It's like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. But basically, people lie to themselves saying this doesn't matter to them, but I don't think that's true. Basically, when you sleep around a lot, it hurts your ability to create long-term meaningful relationships. And a lot of people act like they don't want this, but hey, when you're young, you think a bit differently than you do when you get older. And when people get older, they start to realize the value of long-term relationships. So I'll see just how many people end up regretting sleeping around when they're young, when they aren't really thinking long-term. And then, yeah, by then it could be a bit too late. But what happens here is there's something going on called the Coolidge effect, which this is just one aspect of it. But basically, the Coolidge effect is I'll just give you a brief background on the experiment. That'll help explain it. So you had a psychologist, his last name was Coolidge, and he basically took, I believe it was mice, and did a little experiment with them where he would put a male mouse in with a female mouse in like a little enclosure, and sure enough, the male would mate with the female. And then what he started to do is he would add new female mice into that enclosure slowly over time, and one at a time, should I specify as well. And what he ended up seeing was that the male mouse would go for the new female mouse, the novel one, and he would start forgetting all the old ones that he'd previously slept with. And there is rationale for this. I mean, biologically, that's spreading your seed, right? It's getting your genetics out as much as possible. That's something that like everybody feels to some degree, I imagine. I mean, it's an animal instinct. So that's what was going on for one thing. But the fact that it started neglecting the prior partners is significant because, yet again, we can't act like we're separate from animals. And I get that we are in many ways because we are the smartest, but still, like, we are very much ruled by our biology. For instance, like, good luck trying to not be affected by your emotions at all. Like, have fun with that, right? Like, that's something we can't quite control. Or, for instance, our more monkey brain, like, you can't really control that aspect of your brain. Literally, we can't control that. That's something we don't have conscious control over. So there are ways in which we are very much still animals, even though everybody likes to believe that we're not. We are. So we can't act like we're completely above our instincts in that regard. So the more that you sleep around, you'll experience some form of the Coolidge effect. Basically, it means that people that you sleep around with, you're going to want new and exciting partners over time, and you're going to get bored of the old ones. So that pretty much means if you try to find a long-term partner, you may get bored of them. They may start losing their shine over time because they're not new and exciting. If you've had a lot of partners, like, how are you going to be fully satiated, I guess, by just one? It's not going to work. Not to mention, it's going to hurt your ability to even open up to them emotionally anymore. Like, you're probably going to lose that ability to trust someone wholly because you've been with all these people who you did one of the most trusting acts with, and it didn't last long. Like, they would left your life pretty soon after. So that's basically training yourself to just give up something really, I don't want to call it special per se, because, well, I mean, in a way it is. Like, that act, it's something incredibly intimate. So when you give that up to just random people that you're never going to see again, it's like you're kind of showing that you don't really respect yourself, because yeah, I hope you can understand what I'm getting at here, because I'm trying to put my thoughts into words, and it's a bit difficult in this regard. But it's important, guys. You don't want to hurt your ability to pair bond. I know that when people are young, they act like the future doesn't matter anymore. They're just living in the moment, doing whatever feels good, whatever's going to make them have the most fun. But you have to remember, you're not going to be young forever. And at some point, as you get older, you'll probably start realizing the value of long-term relationships. And you'll hopefully see just how impactful they can be in your life, having the right one. So the more that you sleep around when you're young, you hurt your ability to do that as you get older. It's basically you sacrificing the future to live in the present. It's sacrificing having long-term, meaningful relationships for just chasing short-term pleasure. Is that worth it? I'll let you think about that, but I'll leave you with this. Happiness, should I say long-term happiness, rarely ever comes from chasing short-term pleasure. Sure, you can get like brief little moments of happiness, those brief hits of dopamine and serotonin when you engage in meaningless sex with people you're never going to see again. But how long does that happiness last? How long? Think about that. Now, when you actually chase something meaningful, something that's fulfilling, like a long-term healthy relationship, how much happiness do you get from that? There you go. That's the problem when you chase short-term pleasure. That happiness, sure, you may get like a very brief moment of it, but it's only ever temporary. When you go for things that require more effort and are more meaningful, you get a more constant form of happiness, one that's not as fleeting as chasing short-term pleasure. So even though short-term pleasure may feel great in the moment, once that moment is gone, so is the happiness and those great emotions that accompanied it. This is why it's important to actually be thinking in the long term. The more that you sleep around with people and think it's not affecting you, guess what? It actually is. So yeah, I realize this whole video is basically me just kind of trying to convey the importance of long-term relationships and the meaning that they bring. And I get not everybody's probably thinking in that way right now, but I'm just telling you, it's something that's important. And you may not realize that now, but I strongly believe the future you will. So make sure you actually make decisions with future you in mind and not just current you who may need some more growing up to do to kind of realize the importance of this stuff. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you in this video. I hope you're able to understand what I was driving at. I just truly don't believe hookup culture is going to lead to a lot of people being happy, and I theorize that even like 10 years down the road, there are going to be a lot of unhappy people who engaged in hookup culture. People who thought they were buying their freedom, but further down the road, they pay the price for it, and by then it's too late. I mean, you hear this example a lot of like who wants to enter into a long-term relationship or marry someone who's slept around a lot. And that goes for both men and women. Like a lot of guys throw out that example of women who have a lot of sexual partners, but hey, even guys who engage in hookup culture, they also lose the ability to pair bond long-term, so it goes both ways. Nobody wants to commit to someone who's had a lot of partners because we all instinctively know this. We all somehow on like I guess almost like a animalistic level, instinctually we know that somebody who's slept around a lot probably isn't the best person to raise our children. We just know. There's a reason for that. So come on, guys. Yet again, going back to how we're all animals and we haven't quite risen above that, even though we believe we have. So just make sure you think about future you when you're making decisions in the here and now. But that's pretty much all I'll leave you with. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope what I said made sense. I mean, I really do, because I don't know. Just think about the future you. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed content like this, be sure to subscribe for more. Otherwise, like the video and leave a comment. That's the easiest way you can help me out. Just engage with that algorithm. Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm really curious. And let me know if you have any experience with this, or if you know anyone who's had experience where they engaged in hookup culture and then later on realized how damaging it can actually be. Because I think that's one of the only ways people will kind of understand this, if they read more stories about people who just learned by experience that it's not a good thing to engage in. But anyway, curious to see what you guys have to say. I'll see you in the next video. Arrivederci!